That doesn't look so well, but that looks so much more better. Apple right here. Before we talk about all the effects of Hurricane Florence, the 3 brand new iPhone models are going to be announced in just 3 hours. It's going to be named, as of right now, it's going to be named iPhone XR, iPhone XS, and then iPhone XS Max. The last one's hard to say. Today I'm taking a sick day from high school because I am actually sick. You hear my voice right now. This is definitely not my real voice. It's much deeper than normal. I don't even like it. But a lot is happening today, even forgetting about the upcoming Apple keynote in just less than 2 hours. I'm so excited for it, but I have to talk about Hurricane Florence because it's a Category 4 hurricane burrowing towards the Carolina coastline. And yes, my title is definitely not clickbait because the worst case scenario for Florence making landfall in 40 hours could take place. But let me get you that information, let me get you everything, because Florence right now is a 135 mile per hour Category 4 system. Florence right now has a pressure of 943 millibars, which has steadily dropped over the past 48 hours. It's moving northwest at 15 miles per hour, and it is just getting caught in a ridge to make landfall along the southeastern coast. Before I talk about any more specifics, there are actually mandatory evacuations out already. If you live along the Outer Banks, there's already evacuations in order. But if you live on the coast or just even 100 miles inland along from like the Virginia, North Carolina border all the way to the Georgia, Florida border, I kind of extended it, kind of hinting at this worst case scenario, but anywhere in between that range, you have to start getting prepared. Fill up your car with gas, get your food for 7 days, get your water for 7 days, make sure all your batteries for your phones are charged, get those portable chargers ready, put shutters on your windows. Florence is coming and it's a hurricane. It's nothing to mess around with. And in the last video, we were going to have to be seeing if there was going to be a trend in the models for Florence stalling out once it gets near the Carolinas. And it's looking like that's going to be the case. And if you don't remember, Hurricane Harvey was a Cat 4 system just last year. That made landfall around Corpus Christi, Texas. But because that Category 4 hurricane just made landfall and just stayed there for like 4 straight days, moving just stationary, it dumped 50 inches of rainfall in Houston. 50 inches. And we are right now getting the rainfall forecast for the Carolinas, and it's not looking good. 40 inches of predicted rainfall because of the most likely possibility that Florence is just gonna stall out. There's right now hurricane watches in effect from Myrtle Beach all the way to Charleston, South Carolina, and there's hurricane warnings in 40 hours. You're gonna get the hurricane effects and wind all the way from Myrtle Beach to the Virginia, North Carolina coastline border. And looking at the satellite imagery and seeing that 20-mile wide eye and the possibility of it getting bigger because of the low wind shear and those water temperatures and the possibility of getting to Cat 5, this is a scary situation taking place right now. As of right now, the first patch of outflow clouds and cirrus clouds from Hurricane Florence are making its way over the Carolinas, and it's the very first signs to start wrapping up your preparations. Right now, there's a storm surge forecast for the Outer Banks that's just not good to see. It's 9 to 13 feet of storm surge. You know, your regular ground. Imagine 9 feet of ocean water on top of your just normal everyday things. Yeah, and that's not good. There's also a prediction that 2.7 million people are going to lose power in between Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and even some people in Virginia. Hurricane Florence is not a small system at all. It's like Irma. Those hurricane wind fields is gonna reach like 90 miles out. And that's what just the hurricane hunters just recently found. They found 90 miles out from the center of Florence, hurricane force winds sustained. The European model right now, there's still gonna be some variation to 48 hours to landfall, but this is pretty much getting set in stone. The Euro has Florence making landfall in Wilmington, North Carolina, and just as soon as it kind of makes landfall, Florence kind of pulls back out, then meanders south for a little bit, and then makes a second landfall in Georgia still as a hurricane. The latest GFS model is now actually in agreement with the European model, making it landfall near around the Wilmington, North Carolina area, and then it just meanders a little bit south to the west, and then it makes a second landfall in the South Carolina, Georgia area. Do you know what this means, right? Because that Florence is just going to slowly meander the coastline of South Carolina, and the southern part of North Carolina's coastline is going to get smacked smashed with hurricane force winds for around 48 to 72 hours, and on top of that you're gonna get around 20 to 40 inches of rain. This is like the worst case scenario possible. If this does take place, it's gonna take a while for that South Carolina coastline and the North Carolina coastline and even the Georgia coastline to pick up. They're probably gonna be without power for like a week to maybe a month. It is not gonna be a good situation taking place in the Carolinas this Friday. You can start to expect the first Florence rain bands to reach the Carolinas as of like tomorrow night at around like Friday morning, Thursday night. As soon as those first rain bands come, you know it's only gonna go south, and that's not a good feeling. And my phone just stopped recording in the middle of my video. I thought it was like perfect ending right there, but I have to do it all over again. But the worst part about the hurricane season is that we have to focus on multiple systems at once, multiple hurricanes. We know Florence is heading to the Carolinas, but since that's not gonna have a chance of hitting me and I live in South Florida, I'm looking at Isaac, and all my attention is on Isaac for right now. Because if you don't remember, I made a video just 40 hours ago and all the models were having Isaac just go west in the Caribbean Sea and just dissipate just to the west and not affect any land in the US at all. But now all of a sudden, 40 hours later, all the spaghetti models and all the model ensembles are heading to a little bit more northward curve because of Florence stalling out. The latest run on the European model is not as interesting as the GFS, but it's more likely to take place because of the wind shear in the Caribbean. The European model takes Isaac to the west, but it dissipates it into a tropical wave with just some random showers and thunderstorms. But because the European model has Florence stalling out just off the coast of the South Carolina, it has like the rest of Isaac, the invest of Isaac, making like a landfall in South Florida. And the more eye-catching model for sure is going to be the GFS, because what the GFS does is just completely random from its other models. Just like forgetting about that for a second, it takes what Isaac is right now, just a 60-mile-per-hour kind of discombobulated tropical storm, into a hurricane in the Caribbean Sea. Then the GFS adds Isaac, making that northward turn just like the European model and making it landfall in Cuba as a category 1 to 3 hurricane. Very peculiar. Then after it makes landfall in Cuba and then it gets over into the Gulf of Mexico, it re-strengthens, just misses South Florida to the west, and it's now a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, which we all know is scary. Is this run of the GFS going to happen? I don't think so, because the European model has Isaac as just a tropical wave making landfall in South Florida, and the GFS has it as a category 3 hurricane. Two ends of the spectrum, they have to meet somewhere. But for right now, I'm living in South Florida. I am watching Isaac, because over the past 40 hours, all the models and the spaghetti plots changed from just west to having that northward turn, putting South Florida kinda in the spaghetti plots. So we are now gonna definitely have to start watching what Isaac is right now. Just a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, little discombobulated in its system, but it is heading towards the Lesser Antilles this Friday, just in a couple 40 hours. It's gonna bring some rain and wind there, but from what happens after that, it is a mystery that has to be solved. And the very last system that we were watching that could have an effect on land is now Invest 95L, which is just a kind of like miscombobulated, kind of like Isaac, but now in the Gulf of Mexico with less spin. It is now labeled a 60% chance to form within the next 2 days by the National Hurricane Center, but none of the models developed this. But whether or not it forms or not, it's going to bring some rain and wind to the Texas coastline. Make sure you stay safe if you're on the path of Florence. Make sure you know your evacuation plans, get everything ready in the next 48 hours, not even the next 48 hours, the next 24 hours, because the time is coming short where Hurricane Florence is going to make landfall. And I will see you tomorrow.